20 laps. That's exactly how long it took for a 22-year-old kid to make an experienced Formula One engineer pick up the radio and call his boss. The engineer said, "Eddie, something's wrong here. Either they've shortened the circuit, or this kid is incredibly fast." The kid was Michael Schumacher. The boss was Eddie Jordan, and the year was 1991. At the time, nobody in the Formula One paddock cared about Michael Schumacher. He was a Mercedes sports car driver. He had never raced in Formula One. He had never even driven the Spa-Francorchamps circuit before. But Eddie Jordan gave him the seat anyway. The media thought it was a desperate move by a team that just needed someone to fill a car. They thought Jordan was just taking Mercedes money. They thought the kid would be slow, cautious, and completely out of his depth. But here's the thing. While the rest of the paddock saw a rookie who was just making up the numbers, Eddie Jordan saw something else entirely. He saw a driver who was about to turn the lights on in a dark room. This is the story of the greatest debut in modern Formula One history, and why Eddie Jordan was right about Michael Schumacher, even when nobody else was listening. Because the question was never whether Michael Schumacher was fast enough. The question was whether anyone was brave enough to find out. To understand why this debut was so shocking, you have to understand the chaos that created it. In August 1991, the Jordan Grand Prix team had a massive problem. Their lead driver, Bertrand Gachot, had just been sent to prison in London after an altercation with a taxi driver. The Belgian Grand Prix was days away. The team had a car, but no driver. Eddie Jordan needed someone fast, but more importantly, he needed someone who came with a checkbook. Mercedes-Benz offered him $150,000 to put their young sports car driver in the seat. Jordan asked Schumacher's manager one simple question: has he ever driven at Spa? The manager lied. He said yes. The truth was, Schumacher had never driven a single lap around the most dangerous, demanding circuit on the Formula One calendar. He didn't even know which way the corners went. So when he arrived in Belgium, he didn't stay in a luxury hotel. He stayed in a youth hostel. 2 small beds, a toilet in the middle, and a window that looked out onto a car park. And while the other drivers were resting, Schumacher pulled a fold-out bicycle from the boot of his car and pedaled around the 7-kilometer track just to learn the layout. Think about that for a second. The man who would go on to become the most successful driver in Formula One history was riding a tiny fold-out bicycle around Spa-Francorchamps the night before his debut, alone, in the dark. He was a complete unknown, a kid on a bicycle. But then he got into the car. A test was hastily arranged at Silverstone just days before the race. Jordan's technical chief, Gary Anderson, expected a cautious, careful driver who would need time to adjust. That's not what he got. After just 20 laps, Anderson called Jordan on the radio. He couldn't explain what he was seeing. The times didn't make sense. The kid was as fast as anyone who had ever driven that circuit. Jordan later described the moment he watched Schumacher drive for the first time. He said it was like seeing Ayrton Senna all over again. Not just the speed, the presence, the confidence, the absolute certainty that this car belonged to him. It was like suddenly turning on the lights in a dark room, Jordan said. But the paddock didn't know any of this. As far as Formula One was concerned, Jordan had just signed a sports car driver with Mercedes money and a lot to prove. When Friday practice began at Spa, the paddock expected Schumacher to be miles off the pace. His teammate, Andrea de Cesaris, was a veteran of over 160 Grand Prix starts, a man who had been racing at the highest level for over a decade. But within a few laps, something impossible happened. Schumacher wasn't just matching his experienced teammate, he was destroying him. De Cesaris came back to the garage, completely dumbfounded. The engineers looked at the telemetry and realized that the rookie was taking the terrifying Blanchimont corner flat out. De Cesaris, with all his experience, was lifting off the throttle. Schumacher wasn't nervous. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was pushing the absolute limits of a car he had only driven for the first time 4 days earlier. By Saturday afternoon, the impossible became reality. Schumacher qualified 7th on the grid. He out-qualified his veteran teammate by 4 places and by 7/10 of a second. He was faster than drivers who had been racing in Formula One for a decade. He was faster than drivers who had won races, won championships, and spent years learning this exact circuit. The paddock was stunned, but most of them still thought it was a fluke. They were about to find out how wrong they were. If you're enjoying the story of how one man discovered the greatest driver in Formula One history, take a second to hit the subscribe button. It helps the channel grow and ensures you won't miss the next deep dive into the paddock's biggest stories. When the lights went out on Sunday, Schumacher made a brilliant start. He survived a lockup at the first corner and immediately shot up to 6th place. He was fighting with the biggest names in the sport. He was exactly where Eddie Jordan knew he belonged. But as he climbed the famous hill at Eau Rouge, the clutch on his Jordan completely failed. His race was over before he had even completed a single lap. For the critics, it was an easy excuse to write him off. A burnt-out clutch, a rookie mistake, a flash in the pan. But the people who actually understood the sport knew the truth. The telemetry did not lie. The qualifying time did not lie. If the car had survived, Schumacher would likely have finished on the podium in his very first race. His teammate, De Cesaris, was running second and catching Ayrton Senna's ailing McLaren before his own engine failed with 3 laps to go. Schumacher, who had been faster all weekend, would almost certainly have been right there with him. Eddie Jordan knew he had found a generational talent. He immediately tried to lock Schumacher down to a long-term contract. He knew that if he could keep this kid, his team could win world championships. But he wasn't the only one who had been watching. Flavio Briatore, the boss of the Benetton team, had seen enough. He didn't care about the burnt clutch. He didn't care that Schumacher had only driven a few hundred meters in the race. He saw exactly what Eddie Jordan saw. Before the next race even started, Briatore launched a ruthless legal and financial assault to steal Schumacher away from Jordan. Eddie Jordan fought with everything he had. He went to the British courts. He applied for injunctions. He stayed up through the night before the Italian Grand Prix, negotiating, arguing, threatening. He tried to hold on to the driver he had given a chance to when nobody else would, but he lost. In the early hours of Friday morning, just hours before first practice at Monza, Benetton emerged victorious. Schumacher was gone. Jordan later said, "Of course there was friction. Of course there was aggravation. Of course I went to the courts." But the courts couldn't help him. The contract hadn't been fully signed. Schumacher was free to go. And what happened next is the part of the story that makes Eddie Jordan's discovery so bittersweet. In his very first race for Benetton, Schumacher finished 5th. He outqualified his 3-time world champion teammate, Nelson P.K. He was 22 years old. He had now driven in exactly 2 Formula One races. A year later, he was back at Spa, the same circuit where he had burned out his clutch on the first lap, the same circuit where he had pedaled around on a fold-out bicycle the night before his debut. He won. It was the first of 91 Formula One victories. In 1994, Schumacher won his first world championship with Benetton. In 1995, he won his second. Then he moved to Ferrari, a team that had not won a championship in 16 years. And what he did there is almost impossible to comprehend. He won 5 consecutive world championships with Ferrari, From 2000 to 2004, he was untouchable. He won 11 races in a single season. He finished on the podium in every race of an entire year. He broke records that had stood for decades and then broke them again. By the time he retired in 2006, he had 7 world championships, 91 race wins, 68 pole positions, 154 podiums. He was the most successful driver the sport had ever seen. And it all started with a fold-out bicycle and a white lie at Spa. Now here is the part of the story that nobody talks about. While Schumacher was winning championships, while he was becoming the most famous racing driver on the planet, Eddie Jordan never stopped watching. The two men remained close friends for decades. Jordan never held a grudge about losing Schumacher to Benetton. He understood the game. He knew how Formula One worked, but he never forgot what he had seen in those 20 laps at Silverstone. At Schumacher's 300th Grand Prix in 2012, Jordan was there. He walked up to Schumacher before the race and handed him a new clutch, a joke, a reminder of where it all began. Schumacher took him in his arms and said, "Eddie, nobody would have thought back then that we would still be here." Jordan said there were tears in his eyes. That is the relationship between the man who discovered Michael Schumacher and the man who became the greatest driver in Formula One history. Not bitterness, not regret. Just two men who both knew what had happened in those 20 laps at Silverstone and what it had meant for the sport. Then came December 2013. Schumacher was skiing in the French Alps with his family when he fell and hit his head on a rock. The impact was catastrophic. He was airlifted to a hospital and placed in a medically induced coma. The world held its breath. Eddie Jordan tried to visit him. He flew to France. He made calls. He asked to be let in. He was turned away. Schumacher's wife, Corinna, had made the decision to protect her husband's privacy completely. No visitors. No exceptions. Even the man who had given Schumacher his start in Formula One was not allowed through the door. Jordan understood. He said, "They told me, 'We love you, Eddie, and we have been involved with you for a very long time, but we do need privacy and to safeguard Michael.'" He never got to see him again. Eddie Jordan passed away in March 2025. At the age of 76, he never found out if Michael Schumacher would recover. So let us go back to that youth hostel in Belgium one final time. In August 1991, a 22-year-old kid with a fold-out bicycle and a borrowed race suit was about to make his Formula One debut. Nobody knew his name. Nobody expected anything from him. But one man had sat in a garage at Silverstone 4 days earlier and listened to a radio call that changed everything. "Eddie, something is wrong here. Either they have shortened the circuit, or this kid is incredibly fast." Eddie Jordan was right about Michael Schumacher. He was right when nobody else was watching. He was right when the paddock was laughing. He was right when the courts took Schumacher away from him and handed him to Benetton. He spent the rest of his life knowing that he had been the first person to see what the world eventually came to understand. The greatest driver in Formula One history started with 20 laps, a fold-out bicycle, and one man who was paying close enough attention. Eddie Jordan was right, and the rest of the world took 30 years to catch up. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more stories like this one, check out the other videos on the channel. I'll see you there.